Hello, everybody. Oh, I've just realized that I forgot to put chat up. So let me do that really quick because I want to be sure to be able to see what everybody's saying. Because right now I can't even confirm whether or not you can hear me. Almost there. I see 15 people, it looks like. Let me just pause my video so it doesn't waste any bandwidth for us. My windows are a little frustrating sometimes. Okay, Kurinico confirms that I can be heard. Yay. So, I suspect right now it's probably just people who've been here before, but we may have some new people since I'm sure that some people are being introduced to the Reaper Kickstarter shows through the Reaper Twitch shows through the Kickstarter. So hopefully everybody in chat will help me if I don't see that there's someone new who has questions. Help them find out what they need to know about this, about the Kickstarter, whatever. Apparently it's my 27 months of anniversary. Yay! So I wish that I could tell you that I had a whole bunch of cool new things to show you, but nobody at Reaper has had time to be printing and sending me out things. But as most of you know, Reaper's having a party for the end of the Kickstarter. So the party itself is Saturday, I think from noon to 5 Reaper time. But many of the artists are coming in Wednesday, and I'm sure that we will be seeing all of you on Twitch from Wednesday through Saturday for Kickstarter related stuff. And maybe I can sneak around and get some photos or prod Ron for some hints or something. So we'll find out. So those of you who don't normally come to Beyond the Kit, that's what the name of the show is, because I'm Rhonda Bender. I write the Learn to Paint kits for Reaper Miniatures. You probably think of this as the lead-in to the Bone 6 fix, which will start immediately after this show at 5 p.m. Reaper time. And Quindy is our helpful moderator, and she's putting up some information in this. She's always good about putting up links in the chat as I say things. And I don't have the presence of mind to press buttons. I have like a little Stream Deck thing. I need to figure out how to make it do macros, and then I could kind of try to help Quindy out. Right now she's telling you information about my stuff. So I have a blog where I write a lot about how to paint miniatures. So you might want to check that out if you like painting miniatures. And want some tips on how to do it better. And I know that I mostly paint display quality, although not always here on the show, but I don't assume that everyone who reads the blog does. And I think a lot of things you can do with different kinds of painting also apply to other kinds of painting. So I'm not snobby about painting for tabletop or quick paints or any of that stuff. In fact, I wish I had better skills with that. But one of the things about me going to Reaper is that I will be taking miniatures with me that I've painted to drop them off. We don't like to put them in the mail if we can avoid it. Events have transpired. So we like to bring them in person. So anything that I've painted over the, since ReaperCon is here in my house right now, but will not be in my house the next time I do a show. So I thought I would just show you some stuff, then do some painting, and then maybe show you some stuff again at the end, depending on how the timing works out. So I'm going to flip over to my other view window. I have this little gray paper so it's easier to see the miniatures. So I'm going to briefly travel back in time to Bones Kickstarter 5 because I'm going to bring these figures in to Jean, the person who sculpted them. So these were part of the Dark Temptations level, I want to say. Unfortunately, I never got the incubi. So there are incubi and succubi that were in a set in the Kickstarter. I don't know if they've been released into retail yet, and if they are, if they're being released as individual figures or if they're being released as sets of all of them, or just the 3 succubi and the 3 incubi. And I think Jean did a really fantastic job with this. And then I had fun trying to paint some transparent cloth. Because there's really only certain figures that you can pull that off with. The cloth has to be sculpted in a certain way. And I may be talking about that when I post this figure. who I did not paint with transparent cloth. So she's not quite done, but she's almost done. That's my goal for tonight, is finish this up, and then tomorrow I will be frantically packing. So I have to do her horns, which I'm a little undecided about how to do the horns, but hopefully I'll figure it out. And then, of course, the base. So both non-natural skin colors. There's a lot of different ways to go with if you're not feeling like you have to paint exactly like human skin tones. You got a lot of latitude. So this is sort of the leader of the succubi. And I have blog posts up about this. If you just go type succubi into the search thing, you will find information. There's work in progress pictures of painting the cloth, I think, and the skin. I wrote a lot about painting the skin on these. Bunga Mini says that's one of the favorite miniatures of the Kickstarter, that and the domes. Do you mean the dancing girl that is in the current Kickstarter? I loved her. As soon as I saw that, people who watch Reaper Live, every now and then you'll see Michael in the comments calling dibs. I often just text Ron directly. I'll usually wait till the show is over. But this was one I definitely dibsed, because I'm like, this is right up my alley. Things I like to paint, and I think I could do a decent job of it. This is one of the other succubi that were in the Kickstarter, and it still has tape on it for some reason. So I gave her a very pale skin tone. So the article for her talks about some of the challenges of painting a very pale skin tone, which are true whether it's a natural human skin tone or not. Yeah, the dancing tiefling has a really great pose. Like, it really kind of captures it. I'm actually using it, so I'll probably post tonight, if not tomorrow morning, a blog post where I'm going to talk a bit about composing miniatures, which is relevant for conversions, but also if you do like to enter contests or you like to spend a lot of time painting gift miniatures for your friends, it's good to pick a really well-made miniature. And this will give you some ideas of something to look for in the pose, which is you want balance but not symmetry. So the article is going to explain what I mean by that and go over it a little more. And this was the figure that got me thinking about it, because this is what we call a Contrapposto Pose. So instead of the weight being equally on both legs, all of the weight is on one leg, and that tilts the hips, and then that tilts the shoulder, and it gives you this nice S-curve, and it makes the standing figure much more interesting to look at. The last of the succubi, and anyone who has been here for a while knows about my glue curse, so she suffered the glue curse, and I'm thinking I probably just won't even fix it until I get there to try and hope that it stays. So she does have wings, just not right now. And I tried to paint each of them a slightly different overall value of skin. So this was meant to be a darker skin tone, which I don't know if I've got too much brightness on my camera right now, but she's a darker skin tone. And one of the articles talks a little bit about how I chose the colors for the freehand, because I didn't want the freehand. You know, freehand's a nice trick, and it's a good way to show off your paint skills, but, and this is something to keep in mind when you're entering a contest, it should contribute to the overall piece. So the main story of this figure is not the pillow, it's up here. You know, look in her eyes, I guess. Maybe slightly lower than her eyes. So I did kind of a subtle tone-on-tone thing instead of, a very colorful design on the pillow, because these are very subdued colors on all of these, or desaturated colors. So I didn't want like a bright, colorful red satin pillow or something like that. And then they all have the same wing color to bring them together as a group. If only all of them still had their wings. But alas. And I still have to fix the dwarf, which I probably should fix beforehand, but I don't know if I'm going to have enough time. I forgot to keep pen up. All right, what else have we got? So this guy is the Wag Halter, which I think it means gallows bait. So Ron wanted a really rough and tumble, dirty kind of street thug type thief. So that was interesting for me, because I often paint in that, you just saw those figures very clean and you know, go for smoothness a lot. So I was really trying to go with a different style on this guy than, you know, my more typical approach. Because I think it's good to, you know, mix up your genre, mix up your colors, mix up the style of thing you paint. Those are all very useful things to do. Some of you may remember this guy because we painted him on the show. So this is Hackle Black Hook. We're going to say Hackle Black Hook. Sure, why not? But if you go to... So these shows are old enough that they're probably not on Twitch anymore. I'm not sure exactly how long the Reaper Twitch archives things. But they are on Reaper's YouTube channel. So Reaper has a YouTube channel, and each of the shows has a playlist. And so there will be 2 or 3 videos of my considerations in painting this guy and doing the little hyena spots. And I think this color on the sash, I was kind of like, I don't know what color to do. So, you know, someone in chat called it a couple colors, and I made that work. Or one color, and then I think I had to mix something. Who else do we have? So we have these little halfling guys who live in the pirate city of Brinewind. That was our ReaperCon theme location a couple years. I think, well, we kind of got 2 because it was supposed to be, you know, the 2020 theme, and then, you know, 2020. So there was a virtual con, so it was the theme for that. But then when we did finally meet last year, it was also the theme for the in-person con. So, and these 2 guys are kind of a similar thing. I'm trying to paint a little less, you know, they live in a pirate city and they work in a busy kitchen. They are not going to look clean and pristine. So I was trying to explore with that and practice the method of painting. I normally paint, I start in the like a middle color and then put the shadows in and then put the highlights in. And with these, I was practicing what I studied with Sergio Cabo Rubio, which is to start with the darkest color and work up, which many of you probably do, but I just had never kind of done that much. So they were partly practicing that. And they have a friend who works in the same kitchen. He's a little less cuddly. And he may not be as good with that knife as he wants to be, because his name is Nub, and he doesn't have all his fingers. So mistakes were made. And I was trying to give his clothes like a bit of texture and wear and stuff. Who else do we have? These little guys. So these little guys were from the first quick paint. So Reaper's doing these now. So you get a bunch of paint, you get a brush. I thought you got a brush. Yes, there it is. And then you get a pack of guys. In this particular case, it's 6 goblins. So I think there's 2. No, the poses don't actually repeat. I just could only paint so many to fit in the kit. Because the instructions are not huge. So don't think of this as like the same level as the Learn to Paint kits. If you've seen those, this is more taking the techniques that you'd use in those, and I'm giving you color schemes and ways to apply colors and maybe a few extra tips. So that is what those guys are. And I have that because I would like to do this on the show one day, do one of these. So one of them in the instructions I did with layering. So the information from the Reaper Learn to Kit Layer Up. And the other one, I use the information in the Reaper Learn to Kit Core Skills, which is dry brushing and washing. So there's one of each in the, and there's a picture of each one at every step in the quick paint. And then I tried to duplicate the same feel of color scheme that I had used on the Goblin Band from Bones 5, which I also painted, but Reaper already has those miniatures. So that's those guys. And then there's been another of those quick paints released, which is on these little kobolds. And that is this one. Which again, I have because I'm hoping that we will be able to do, I mean, you can paint along with me, maybe. I want to try to advertise this show when I do those ones a bit in advance, so that if someone does want to try to paint along with me, or, you know, make sure they have the stuff so that they could go practice after, that they have the tools to do that. So these are cute little kobolds. And they are cute little koalas, actually. But again, I did the same thing where this one is the dry brushing one. And then I think... I'm trying to remember which one, so I painted 3, but there's 2 that you see all the steps of in the instructions. And then the third one was to look good on the cover. But painted in the exact same way as the others. Well, and while we're looking at creatures you might meet while you're wandering in a dungeon, I'll show this guy again before he goes off to live at Reaper. So he's a goblin, and he has not actually yet been revealed in the Kickstarter. My guess is that he's going to be in the dungeon expansion with some friends, but I don't actually know. But I don't think they'd have given him as a promo if they didn't plan on having him and his friends come to the party. So this one is actually the same material that people got if you got these as a promotional item, and the same material I suspect that they'll be in the Kickstarter. Well, they could get changed to Bones USA. So this is Bones Black, and I didn't have the 3D print of him, despite Ron's belief that I did. So I painted one out of the blister. That's why I don't have a gray one anymore. And he's not a member of the party that everyone else is in. So this is the wizard, who is another... These next 4 figures were also promotional figures. I don't know, I should have asked, but I didn't. I'm sorry, I forgot. Whether these are still going out in Reaper orders. If they have some left, I'm sure that they are. But they may have run out by now. Hold on, maybe I didn't bring everyone over. What about the wizard? There's the fighter. There's a little fighter. And I love that he is a halfling. Because, you don't always have to be the typical class that your culture is good at. Branch out. Here's another sad story of me and glue. And remember, these are 3D prints. So that little goblin that I was painting wouldn't have done this. Even though he's a monster, he wouldn't have done this to me. But she was broken when I opened the box. But yeah, so she's the cleric of the party. And then I have the thief over here because I last week I was working on trying to do a better version of OSL source lighting with my promo copy than I did with the one I sent to Reaper. And there's a variety of reasons why this one isn't top-notch OSL, some of which are me making mistakes, and some of which are so that you could see the other characters. And there is a blog post up about that. It is my current blog post. So if you just go to that link that Quinny had earlier and hit blog, you will find a post about painting OSL. But after I did that, I thought it'd be nice if I kind of demonstrated the purposes on the show. And I think it's always... A lot of people find it tough to compare apples and oranges. So for me to say the OSL isn't great on this figure and it's better on this one. Well, the colors are completely different. The pose is completely different. The figure is completely different. The type of light is completely different. The principles of how I painted them are the same, but we don't all visualize well enough to see what I did better here than I did here. So I kind of want to finish this up, partly just because, I don't know, you guys tell me, is anyone else out there a nervous traveler? I'm not afraid of flying. Once I'm on the plane, I'll probably fall asleep before it finishes taking off. But I'm very nervous about, did I pack everything? Am I getting to the airport on time? Am I at the right gate? All that kind of stuff stresses me out immensely. So I'm already, I call it pre-trip stress mode. So I'm already in stress mode. And I was like, okay, it will make my life easier, and I think also be of value to people because you'll be able to compare them. If there's more paint on this one, you'll be able to compare them more easily to see if the OSL is better and how. I will just keep working on this figure. Quinny literally hates every part of travel. Yeah. I mean, I don't love being on, like, planes are very uncomfortable because the seats are tiny and we're all crowded in, and, you know, people are bumping your leg as they go down the aisle. But once I'm on the plane, it's like, it's someone else's problem. Like, if there's a screw up, it's someone else's problem. It's not me. So I think that's what stresses me out, is that I'm going to mess up in some way. And then miss my flight, and then, you know, upset who's ever waiting for me on the other end. So yeah, that's my brain. Nico frets like crazy before I travel. Once I'm on the way, I'm fine. Yeah, I'm kind of like that. Because, I mean, I stress a little about packing up the car and everything, too. It's like, did I remember everything? Am I going to go nuts driving? Daka Flocka Flame. I'm not afraid of flying, but I find airplanes extremely stressful and uncomfortable. Quindy Lou, also a tremendous overpacker. Going for 2 days, definitely need 2 weeks worth of clothing just in case. Oh yeah, I'm an overpacker. All the other artists make a lot of jokes about my luggage. Now, to be fair, half of that is like stuff to paint with while I'm there. Like, if I'm going somewhere else, I don't pack as much stuff. But it's, you know, it's 7 days, which is kind of really 8 days, because you gotta be dressed for the day back. And then I have to have all my stuff. Grey Moster is good to go with a walking stick and some clothes. Well, we are all envious of you. Yeah, Daka Flocka Flame. I don't know if you're old like me, but I am old enough to remember when flying was kind of like this fun, exciting. Like, people would dress up a little for it, and you could go to the airport with your friends and wait at the gate, or stand outside the gate when your family was landing and greet them excitedly. And it's like, for years now, they've just been sucking every possible part of fun and comfort out of airports and airplanes. It's like, oh, do people like that? No, we can't do that. So, that's how I feel about that. I used to not like the little tiny planes either. I felt safer in the really big planes because I live in a tiny regional airport place. But I've switched on that because you can get those planes loaded in the air, bang, bang, bang. So, like, even when they're 10 minutes late or 15 minutes late loading, it's like, whatever. It takes us 5 minutes to get in, and then they'll just make it up in the air, and they almost always do. So I'll just show her again because I won't get to show her in person finished probably, but I will take pictures. I thought about trying to work on the base for today, but since, you know, she's meant to look really nice, I like to not potentially make mistakes on stream. And then I am also taking this to Reaper because I'm mailing it from there. I'm going to ask Jason to sign a card with me to go to the people who run Nova Charities. So this is going to go in a raffle at Nova Charities, and there's a lot of other great stuff that's coming in. I think people are working on, I can't remember the Marvel board game where the pieces are like chibi guys. I think people, like some really high level painters, are working on painting some of those. So there are some, if this guy does not interest you, there are some cool things, and you should still check out that auction, which I believe starts May 15th. But they have us all send things to like a central location, and that person takes additional pictures or does turnarounds or whatever. So I'm going to take my own pictures, but then send it in. So he will hopefully help the Ukraine twice, because I bought him from Reaper's charity efforts, and now I'm sending him into a charity auction. Well, and I do have this guy that I can show. Oh, but I'm going to have to zoom way out, because look at him. Look at him. He's magnificent. So this is the Chibi Dragon for the Pathfinder characters. Although I don't think they're a set. I think you can get like the goblin separate and the character separate, and then this guy separate. If he's even, has he been unlocked? I don't, like, I do follow along, but then I have no brain. I love this guy too, and I also love that I think I would be fine using him as a non-chibi type character, because there's, someone was saying he's got like a horny toad type head, so he could just be a different species of dragon or subspecies or whatever. I mean, the dang things are pretend mythical creatures in the first place. Why can't they look however we want? So that I do have Sir 4 scale. I don't have how tall is it? Well, I do have how tall is it, or how tall is it, whatever we're calling him now. But somewhere in a box, and he only has the ruler in Jason's program. Like, he wasn't printed out with a ruler. He's like a normal miniature. He doesn't wander around carrying a ruler. Quinny Lou says it's a lot of info to follow along on. He's only been shown on streams, I'm pretty sure. He could pass as a baby dragon. Yes, I agree. A very ticked off baby dragon. Maybe mom's late with lunch. And you made the mistake of coming into his cave and now your lunch. So I will get to painting this lady. But if we do have some people who are new here, if you have questions about the Kickstarter or how Kickstarter in general works, or, you know, the party, anything like that. Like, I don't have any more secret intel, but I can share kind of general information, and I've been using Kickstarter a distressingly large amount, not just for Reaper. So I'm certainly experienced with Kickstarter in general. And I will be happy to try to answer those questions. So this was left over from painting her hair. I should have done little swatches, but I did not. So that's the teal from painting her hair. And then I think I had to, some of the dark lining around the jewelry was a little too wide, so I just had to get the skin colors and pretty that up. But since that paper is not yet exhausted, and that's like a paper I paid for instead of I mean, you know, I'm fine. I think parchment paper works just fine with this palette, which, if anyone is curious, is the Exemplar Palettes. I know we had some other backers here on the of this Kickstarter, so hopefully yours has finally arrived. It seemed like it was taking them a little span of time to get them up. Gray Mouser, which is that story? I was a tad late. Which is what? Gray. And then I will answer your question. So, I'm kind of using like this mini or the dragon that I was showing you a minute ago. Or this. You mean this lady? This is a Hellborn dancer, and she is in the corset of the current Kickstarter. And hopefully I will finish her tonight. Kriniko finalized the Infinity Kickstarter today. Only added another 4max to the tally, so I definitely made my will save. Yeah, we do board games more than miniatures now, and I get sucked in a lot by do you want to upgrade to this cute money or this other stuff? It's very hard to say, no, I don't want all the coolness. But our house is not that big, so I need to start saying no to all the coolness. So I'm changing up the pants color a little from what I did on the original, and my idea is to use colors with a little more yellow on the side that's being lit, and then colors that are a flatter kind of brown on the shadow side. So if you weren't here last week, one of the key elements to painting source lighting is to remember that we don't actually have light unless you're doing mini LEDs, in which case you probably need to go watch Crafty Creative or something, Crafty Creative, because I am not going to be able to help you. So we have to use the properties of paint to create the illusion that something is casting light, and the most important ones for that are value, which is the dark to light, and saturation, which is how bright or subdued. So this is, let me get that'll work. This is a very saturated red. These are less saturated reds. So that you can see a little more of that going on with this one. So there's more, orange and yellow in her hair on that side and less on this side. And then the shirt is a richer, brighter type of teal on the part that's being lit, and then more of a navy, purpley teal on the parts that are being shadowed. So I'm trying to do that same principle with the pants. So I'm mixing the colors up. I'm keeping the same inspiration of the types of colors that were on the original. Just trying to mix it up with, you know, a little bit, vary the saturation and, yeah, in fact, that is on the wrong side now. Vary the saturation and the value a little more. Daka Flocka Flame has been trying to avoid Kickstarter other than Reaper, but I got sucked into that big airship board game. Oh, that sounds like something my husband's probably in that I may not have been told about. Because he's also a sucker for steampunk airships. So my challenge is trying to remember which colors I picked out for which. I will probably have organized them a little differently if I were doing this on my own recognizance. All right. Get a brush. Actually, that is not the brush I thought I should get. We'll live with it. And where's my very attractive headgear? Quindy, I've been doing well to stay away from Kickstarter, but Bones 6 and then Chimera happened. Yes, that is true. Chimera is also... They're trying to tempt our money away. I mean, the nice thing about the Bones one is that, I mean, if you can, it's good to pledge as much as you can right now. Because it unlocks stuff. Hold on, I'm just looking for my phone because I have lighting reference photos on here. So these figures, and there's more information about this on my blog if you weren't here last week. I took pictures using a black, like I primed the figures entirely in black and then used white sprayed from different directions to figure out where things were going to have more light reflected from. And then you have to also adjust that a little, but it's a good starting point. So I have them off on my phone to reference a little while I'm painting because I don't always remember that kind of stuff. The game is called Aladra with the steampunk airships. I'll have to tell him that because I'm nice and I do like him. Kriniko is a sucker for Dragon Minis. The Monster Hunter one was very expensive for her. I don't think I saw that one. Daka Flocka Flame needs to up Bones pledge for the new Bugbearers. Yeah, those are cool. And they mesh well with the previous Bugbearers. But yes, so I was trying to say, if there's some other Kickstarter that's happening right now and you're torn between Bones, or, you know, maybe you just have life, because life certainly happens. I've been having some life lately. The nice thing about the Bones Kickstarters is that as long as you're in, you can go in via the pledge manager and increase your money later. And continue to do that even. My understanding is that some people, you know, once a month after payday or whatever, go in and add more goodies. So this is just kind of an initial wet blend. And I will have to do this again, very few paints, coat in one coat. So this is just kind of establishing the first initial transitions. And what I actually need for this area, hopefully she's going to stay in focus better than last week. I was trying to mess with stuff again. It was being very boogery before I started. Doesn't seem like she's staying in focus. And I thought we had cracked this code a few weeks ago. Everything seemed to be going well. I have not made a dark enough shadow for the shadow side of the pants. And had I known I'd been planning to paint this miniature from the beginning, I probably would have done the pants before the hair. But that's cool. So with the originals, I mixed in this black indigo for my shadows a lot. And I'm just going to do that to make some darker shadows for the pants. because I got a color that was duller, but I didn't get colors that were enough darker. Kurnico pays the Reaper Pledge Manager tax until it closes. So she goes back in and picks out some additional goodies here and there as time goes by. And sometimes they add stuff too. So just stuff that gets made after, you know, maybe it wasn't quite finished being sculpted in time to be part of the Kickstarter, or it's just something they're like, hey, this would go real well with this other thing, and all that stuff. But as much as we can do now is good to do for the purposes of the unlocking. And if you haven't seen it, I was hinting about new paint, and what the new paint is now visible in the stretch goal area. You can check those out. And Ron was even saying there may be some samples next week. And that is stuff he would let me share, I imagine. So I'm also trying to keep in mind that we're starting to get further away from the light source. So as light as it got up here, it's not going to be, it shouldn't be that light on the pants, or things are going to look kind of weird. So I may need to darken my pants color a little too. Do I have a dark color? I have that. I'll get my Crow's Nest Pokey Tool. I genuinely do not know if Crow's Nest is on tomorrow. If it is, it will probably just be a combo Crow's Nest Bone 6 update type thing. But since Jason and Michael are both also coming and need to pack and prepare, and Jason's sculpting madly away, I'm sure, it seems entirely likely to me that there may not be a Crow's Nest tomorrow. And I also cannot tell you if there will be this show on next Monday. I think it's entirely possible that Justin will just want to lie down and die after streaming for days and days and days, and that it won't happen. He also wasn't sure if he had the type of camera that I'm using here accessible at Reaper, since they mostly, they're mostly broadcasting from the studio, and it's people sitting at desks, and all the painters, since Anne moved away, all the painters are not, live on site. We're at our homes doing this. They really only use those cameras that they have for ReaperCon classes. And I'm guessing we definitely will be doing that again. This ReaperCon, where in class we had a camera like this, and then there was a big monitor set up on the desk facing towards the class so that people could see the demonstrations a little better. Because that's always been a bit of an issue. Like, I've never loved the gather round thing because I can't see anything with that, not anymore at any rate. I still like to do that because I think it's good for people to see your brush, but like we should paint in classes so that you can see how we hold the brush, how we hold the miniature, all that kind of jazz. But in terms of actually being able to see, like now that I don't even know if you can see it on this camera, that I'm putting darker shadows into the little crevices where there are wrinkles on the pants. Put a little bit ignore the belt for now. I'll put a shadow line under. She's got this kind of like rolled waistband thing going on, so it protrudes enough that it definitely should have its own shadow, in my opinion. So I'm adding a bit of shadow line for that. But my approach to classes is over the years, I've tried to figure out ways to demonstrate stuff kind of like on a macro level. So that even if I don't have a camera, I can try to work around you can only see so much over my shoulder problem. Oh, looks like Imagine was liked what they saw on that Aldera Kickstarter. I guess I will be nice and tell my husband about that. That part's still a little wet, but I think I can do some highlighting on the dark side already. So the thing when you're layering, the wet paint is fine when I'm working, with trying to do the rough wet blends. But for layering, you want the paint underneath to be dry. Or you risk, first of all, you might not deposit any color, and then what have you accomplished with your life? But you also risk pulling up paint that was already where and how you wanted it if you don't let things dry for a second. So you definitely don't want to paint if you still see shiny, but even after that, you want to make sure that it's not too wet. Now, to be honest, I'm not fanatical about this. Every great once in a while, I have paint pull up, and then I just fix it. But it's worth mentioning because I've seen conversations from people who, they were having that problem and they didn't realize that's what the problem was. So it's getting this shadow area as dark as I can is what's going to help the other side read like it's being hit by light. Now, of course, as dark as you can is going to depend a little on the amount of light that you want in your scene. You don't always... I'm picturing her in a very dark dungeon corridor, but that's not always what the scene is. So you don't always have to go super extreme. When I painted the ones for Ron, I was like, okay, well, to make sure that the characters who aren't in a good position in regards to the light sources can be seen, I'm going to assume that there's just a certain amount of ambient light in this area. I think I will go up just a little lighter on the dark side, because these wrinkles are nice. So to go, I'm partly giving my paint a minute to dry, but to go back to my little value scale, and there is white in this, you just can't see it because it's on the white index card. There, now you can see this because it actually is whiter than the index card. So in a normal thing, if I was painting something like this, look at her hair, has a pretty wide value. It goes at least as bright as this, and maybe even just a bit of that, and it goes about as dark as that. And that's the kind of contrast we talk about a lot in miniature painting, where you're adding darker shadows and lighter highlights, and that's very important. It makes things look 3D. Doing that is why, it's very dark here under her back. Let's move that because it's making the camera go weird. and then it's very light here on the top of her belly because I was trying to create the idea that there's more light coming from this direction. So I need that wide spread to make the shapes, you know, to make her torso look like a cylinder, to make her arms look like cylinders, to give her hair that shiny glow thing. Thanks, Jellyware. It's mostly just patience. So I'm just willing to go back over and over and over until the blends are totally smooth. And I also use a lot of transitions. So like little steps in between each six. Like this is not a lot of steps. This is 5 or 6 steps. If I was really painting that range, I would have a few more mixes in between. But part of the challenge of OSL is you can't do that. So I have to save, you know, these. I will bring this back. I have to use these colors on the light side and these colors on the shadow side. So I can't make the hair look, you know, as shampoo ad shiny. And I can't get the skin with quite that same pop because what I'm emphasizing is the difference between areas that are lit and areas that are shadowed. And that's just how OSL works. Unless you have actual light, all you have to work with is value and color, and you have to accept that that's just how it works. And that is, in fact, the challenge of OSL. And then some of it's in our brain, because we'd be like, okay, I want to paint a white shirt. But part of that white is in shadow, and it's so you can't make it white, you have to make it gray. And you just have to trust that because the parts that are near the light are white or close to white. Ideally, you really want white just in the light. You have to trust that the viewer is going to get it. And you do. Our brains are actually really good at this. That's why sometimes things will look wrong, because if you as an artist haven't factored in the thing that our brains are going to factor out to decide what color something is, that's sometimes why it looks wrong. Well, that seems like a weird statement, but it is true. Hopefully she's staying in focus. I'm going to go too crazy with the pants. Start getting some base coats on the boots. I have to figure out what the... Yes, Imagine. Saturation is... And I am trying to do that here. So I'm using a color with more yellow on the part of the pants that's receiving light, and I'm trying to use colors that are very dull brown on the other side, and the same thing here. The oranges and reds are only on the side that's lit, and it's more of a subdued brick red and dark purples on the other side. Hold on, I'm just trying to remember which colors I picked out for the pants, and then which side of the pants, because I was doing the when I do these other ones, you know, I'll often mix. But for the sake of expediency, so I'll just pick my light colors and then mix shadow in. So I pick a shadow color like that black indigo. Blue liner is nice too. I do have blue liner with me. So that will both dull a color down and darken it. So I usually just mix my shadow side colors. But to make things a little faster, trying to grab stuff off my shelf, and also the difference in color might help illustrate the idea of changing the saturation a little more effectively. Some of my paints seem to either want to dispense all the paint or none at all. Not sure why they're being boogery today. I may end up highlighting that a little more. Yeah, I did have another highlight. I thought I did. And I'll briefly show you my palette before I start to paint. I'm also going to put out some white and get another layer down on the torch, and then if other things are drying, I can try and work on the torch. I'll talk a bit about fire as well. Alright, so here is my palette. Zoom back out. Let's see if we can get the bottom in. So ignore the blue stuff in the middle. That's from the Dancing Lady. These are the colors I just painted on the light side of the pants, and these are the colors I was painting on the dark side of the pants. You notice I'm kind of using this as a separator, and if you're doing something like that, that's something to think about, is mentally remembering where you're doing the two halves. So these are the colors that I chose for the light side of the boots, and I may have to go a little darker in some places if there's folds and stuff. And then these colors are for the shadow side of the boots. Well, thank you, Imagine. I don't know that I typically don't do a special con piece anymore. I just do what I do and then put those things from that year in the con. And I don't feel like I've gotten better this year, but I can hope. OSL is actually something that I figured out before I realized how to do a lot of other things. And in fact, if you take some of the principles from OSL and apply it to your general painting, that helps a lot. So this is actually in the Kickstarter. I did forget to show this one earlier, I think. She's in the Kickstarter. The lamp is not as yet, but I have lobbied to have it added, and other people have mentioned it too. And this is one of the first miniatures I did better OSL on. I kind of had like a miniature that wasn't OSL. It was supposed to be, but it wasn't. And then another one that was a simpler design that used some of the concepts from this, and then this one. I mean, I've had a couple others too. I don't have the Christmas one with me because that one was from not last Christmas, but the Christmas before, so it already has made it to Reaper. But I did a big Christmas one for them. So, all right, I am briefly going to consult my pictures again to remember where to make the pants lighter. I mean, the boots. They're thigh-high boots. They're kind of like pants. And then I'm also using my own judgment a little, which I did on this one. And I think the pants actually are one of the better areas for exemplifying, you know, the light side is a bit different than the shadow side. And this is like, it's just going to be super dark under the leg because that's under, like, it's not receiving light and it's not like people are looking at it. So why wouldn't it be super dark? In fact, it probably should even be darker than this one I'm putting on. Get some of that black indigo that is my universal shadow color, which is something you can do on non-source light miniatures. You can use the same color to mix your darkest shadows or your lightest highlights, and it adds a lot of unity to your color scheme. Makes it appear that something is being lit by the same light source. This under this leg is also going to be pretty dark. In fact, I'll just go ahead and keep the straight indigo at this point. This side of the thigh is a bit away from the light. That's going to come like down, but it's not going to be able to circle all the way around the leg. It's not going to get that calf either. I'll stay here in the shadow colors for a bit. this is going to be shadow color, but it is facing upwards more, so it's got to be a little bit lighter. Get that completely. So if you've seen people online talking about sketching or roughing in or anything like that, the European painters are very big on this idea. That's kind of what I'm doing now. I'm not worrying about the blends. I'm not worrying about if it's pretty. I'm worrying about, are these colors going where they're supposed to go? Because if I get it wrong, I won't have lost a lot of time. So far I have very little time invested in this miniature. Or we'll say the pants. I mean, I went back and polished up the face and the hair a little bit. Even after last week, I mean, I was doing some of that on screen. But I kept painting for about a half hour after the show finished, just to, you know, tighten things up a little. And now this may actually be too into, oops, I got a big water drop on there. Kerr says, looks like we're the only ones active right now. Yeah, I can't see how many people are watching while I'm painting, but it's not unusual to have people who are like watching or listening but not commenting. And if that is because you are shy, I totally get that. But if you ever have a question and you'd or something you'd like to see me address on the show or whatever, feel free to send me a private message and I will see what I can do. Ah, Michael Mordor. Hello. And Party of 18. Welcome, Raiders. Today I'm working on painting a better version of Sourcelight than I painted on this miniature the first time. There are reasons why this wasn't great. But also to kind of just talk about some of the principles behind Sourcelight and how, because I actually don't think it's an advanced technique the way some people talk about. You don't need to be able to blend smoothly. You can do this with dry brushing. So it's not like freehand or doing, you know, little tiny texture strokes or stuff that requires a lot of precision that you see painters doing that you don't want to bother with because you need to get stuff done quickly, or, you know, you just like to paint for fun. You don't like things to be that stressful. OSL is perfectly accessible in all of those situations, in my opinion. Now we will assume that a little bit of the light is coming over there. I think that's what I did here. Oh. So I'm not dry brushing this particular mini, but I have done it with others and I think it works fine. And then if you go to my blog page, there are some pieces by other people, and that includes some of the first OSL that was really seen in the miniature world by the Australian painter Victoria Lamb. And I don't know if she dry brushed everything, but she mentioned to me once dry brushing stuff, and I know she dry brushed the wall that looks really cool in the one piece that is actually, you know, kind of the main element of light. It looks like my old water drop. Got very excitable. So I'm going to have to leave the pants to dry for a minute, and I will do what I said and start looking at the torch. Green users is lurking. Too much to finish. Hey, I'm impressed you're even lurking. Because you guys are really, you know, I didn't get sent anything, so now I'm not getting slammed, I guess. But I mean, I have to finish up the dancing girl and take pictures, and I have something else to take pictures of that. I mean, I know they take pictures of him for the raffle, but I like to take my own pictures as well. I don't mind that I don't get to keep everything I paint, but I do like to have pictures of all of it. Which is sometimes a challenge. If I paint something at Reaper and I actually finish it while I'm there, then I don't have pictures of it and I become a sad person. So. Imagine is asking if Green Users is going to the release party. And Kreniko is lurking while painting minis for Aliens board game. So lots of gribbly, slimy things, or are you painting crew? I kind of hate painting fire, but we'll give it a shot. I'll put out my paints for that while I'm here. As ever, shake your paints more than you see me doing, because right before the show, I toss them on my vortex mixer. Mostly gribblies. You gotta get that. I think it's called Uhu. It's UHU, and people use it to make like mucus trails and sliminess and stuff. Green Users is hoping to be able to come to the Kickstarter party, but does have a family situation that might preclude it. I don't think those paints are 100% dry, but let's assume that the flame is not a flower. So the thing about flame is, people in the miniature world believe that the correct way to paint flame is you have the lightest colors on the interior and darker colors to the exterior. So it's white hot in the middle, and then you move out through your oranges and your reds to the exterior. And I believe that this probably is the way flame behaves. But I'm also mentioning this because if you don't do that, you are very likely to get comments from somebody about how you should have done that. Now, I do think if you're painting something that's clearly a magical effect, you should be able to do whichever way you want, because it's a magical effect and maybe the magic works the other way. So my problem with flame is that I usually paint it too dark or too patchy looking, and I have to go back and touch it up. So that absolutely happened with her thing. And I mean, you're working in a very small area. You've got to have white here, and then this goes to a dark brown there. I mean, that's a lot of color transitions happening and figuring out where to put those. So if you look at the blog post for her, I think there are work in progress pictures where you can see that the flame originally had a little more red and darker red, and then I went back and tried to make it suck less later. I have one older miniature that I still want to go back and fix the flame, because every time I look at it, it just makes me it's just so not good. And I made the flame, so that was actually one of my, if you were here, this is a while ago, but I did an episode on, sculpting without sculpting. Sorry, Green Users. Where I was using different things to make like flames and some other stuff, just some little tips for things you can use to add to bases. And I had made the flame of this guy that way, but the way it ended up painted was not good. I don't know if you can hear a sad little cat down here. Hi, sad little cat. So this is the cat you guys have seen before, and she does this very funny thing, because this happened last night, is why it's on my mind. So she's actually a pretty chatty cat, and she'll wander around and tell us that she wants a treat, or she wants us to come and pet her, or whatever it is. I mean, she's not like necessarily screaming all the time, but she's a pretty chatty cat. Except if she gets trapped in something, her response is to go silent. So then you're looking for, because it's like, if we haven't seen cats for a while, we go looking for the cats, because like maybe they got into something they're not supposed to be in, or they got locked up. So she'll scratch, but as soon as you start calling her name and stuff, she stops doing anything. And it's like, okay, this is kind of the opposite of helpful. So that happened last night. I was sitting at my computer desk frantically I'm trying to get a blog post ready to go before I leave, so that my schedule isn't too off. Because I don't mention it here a lot, but I have a Patreon, and I appreciate the support from that, because that is what lets me keep doing this stuff, making it freely available, is the people who are kind enough to support me. Because if I'm writing, I'm not painting, so I'm not making money. Anyway, I wanted to write a note to my patrons to say it's going to be a bit longer than usual between posts, because I'm going to the party, and then when I come back, I will just need to lie around exhaustedly for a while. But I promise there will be content, because I have to, I haven't even done a post on that little goblin guy yet, so I have to share the colors from the goblin guy. I have to talk about painting the dancing girl. Let's see. I'm just trying to, so light travels in a straight line, so I'm just kind of trying to think about where there might be a little light on this boot. But it is also that's like the most distant part from the candle flame. But yes, eventually I was like, because I was working, and I'm like, I keep hearing the scratching noise. I thought my husband was doing something weird with the chair, and then I thought the other cat was scratching something. And then I'm like, oh no, it's my dum-dum cat, and she's back inside the linen closet again. She is a very sweet, wonderful cat, but she is not a cat genius. And I mean, that's okay. Her job is being a cat. It's not like she needs to be super smart. But it would be good if she was smart enough to at least yell when she's trapped in things. That would be helpful for all of us. But yeah, she's gonna keep my husband busy while I'm gone, because she's kind of my cat, so she's gonna be a little tragic about my not being here, I suspect. I have to give her extra treats and whatnot. Knee. I do want it to drop off. I want this since it's closer to be much brighter. So it's a little bit, when you're figuring out where things are light and dark, you have to think about where your light is, instead of like, we're used to painting everything from above. So if like a fold is facing up, it needs to be lighter. If a fold is facing down. So if you look at the breasts, just because, I mean, they're shapes and they're there, so they're good for this explanation. Normally you would be painting the lighter color here in like a semicircle, and then the darker color would be like a half moon shape underneath. With these, it was more like this, so the half moon of this one would go up here and then down, and the half moon of this one is slightly interrupted by the decoration, but it goes like that. And then the light side goes here to the side. It doesn't go all the way up to the top, if that makes sense. Jellyware. I have a cat that keeps wanting to escape from the house. We finally got her a collar with an Apple AirPod on it in case she gets loose. After she escaped once, but we found her. Well, I hope she doesn't ever run away. I do worry about that. This one's gotten outside a couple of times, but then she's just terrifying when she goes out. Our other cat we take out on a leash, and he's actually really good about not being a door dasher, which is weird because he's like obsessed about trying to get outside. Nico, one of ours deliberately closes doors so she can start shouting for help and get attention for being so stressed. I don't know how, but this one has gotten in the shower a few times, and I think the other one somehow is doing it. The other one is somehow closing the door behind her. It's a sliding door, though, so none of that seems plausible. But a few times she's been trapped in the shower, and it's like, how are you even managing that? So these are saturated yellows and oranges, so of course the coverage is not great. Many of you have heard me say that is the nature of pigment, not paint companies ripping you off. Putting more in is not going to fix this problem because the pigments themselves are transparent. And there is a limit to the amount of pigment you can throw in something and keep that paint film that I have talked about in the past. I still haven't got my little piece of film. But you think about it, it's kind of like this paper. You want a solid film. Well, I mean, I guess it's like this plastic thing, because acrylic paint is making a plastic film once it dries. And you want there to be enough polymers in there that it makes a good film. Alright. This underneath almost seems like it would be more shadowed. And then on top there would be a light part. Which is probably one of the things I would do after. Let's get some more shadow on the shadow side. Down to my darkest color in the little wrinkles. Now those wrinkles are facing up, so I don't think I will use the darkest color. I will go up a little. That needs more darkness, I think. That side needs more darkness because it's directly opposite the light. Then I'll have to come back in and fix the highlights. Or, add some. Just working on the shadows right now. I'm just trying to smooth things a little bit. I mean, I'm not trying to paint this in a, not super fuss, crazy way like I painted the one I did for Reaper, where I was going for super mega ultra smooth, but I do have the courage of my convictions that OSL is fine for quick paints and dry brushing and all of that. So the pants are starting to get there. I'll compare a little to the original. See, now I think the pants are actually one of the better parts on the original, but I think I've improved the sense of light by increasing the saturation of the colors that I used on the light side. Not pants, I mean the boots. They're over the areas that pants would normally be over, so I'm getting confused in my terminology. Daka Flocka Flame. So when we up our Reaper pledge for extra expansions and whatnot, the extra money goes under bonus support. I'm not entirely sure I understand the question. I think so. I mean, you're just putting in an amount, and then you'll go into the Reaper Pledge Manager and decide what that amount is for. So even if you're in the core set level right now, when you start filling in the Pledge Manager, if you've decided you don't want the core set, you'd rather get these expansions and add-ons instead, you can just take the money and use it like that. So whatever you're putting in now is an amount you're agreeing to spend on, assuming that it's still that amount by the end of the Kickstarter. That's the amount Kickstarter is going to remove, and that's the amount you're agreeing that you're going to spend in the Reaper Pledge Manager. Once the Pledge Manager opens, you can spend it on whatever you want. And as we were mentioning earlier, there may be additional things that get added. That certainly happened last time. And then you can add on there too as well. So if something new gets added and you didn't know you wanted it and you pledge for exactly the amount of things that you did want, you'll be able to add. Kickstarter made the terminology confusing when you manage your pledge amount. Instead of just changing your total, you have to put in bonus support in addition to whichever level you pledged for. Well, this is some new nonsense on the part of Kickstarter. It used to be you just change the number in your thing. Also new is that if somebody has like expansions or extra things you can buy, sometimes they'll put that in where you do your pledge. What are the odds of us getting sneak peeks of the new paints on your show? Nomad Zeke, I would say that the odds are very good because I heard a rumor that Ron is trying to get sample bottles made this weekend. So you may not see them next Monday. I mean, if they're ready, you may see them sometime between now and the end of the Kickstarter. Because I think we're supposed to be on stream some. But even if you don't see them there and they let me whatever they let me take home, I will absolutely be sharing. Now, so Curse 13, when I say sample bottles, when they're doing samples of a new thing, it can be a very small batch and they actually fill the bottles with spoons. So it may not be like there's a bunch left over and they send them out in orders and stuff. When they're working on new formulas, it's small batches until they get the color the way they want it. And it's more of a pain in the butt to fill those bottles. So like Anne would do about a dozen before she got tired of doing it. So, it may be a situation like that. I don't know. Ron just said the word sample, and I think he meant sample formulations of the new colors. Because they know roughly what they are, but I don't think they've said it, okay, it's exactly like this. I think that's what might be happening right now. Now, I imagine that if there are mistakes or multiple trials of something while they're mixing and bottling everything for the Kickstarter, that those will end up as samples. Because why waste paint when you can give people cool samples? Yeah, that might be too light. The yellow that I chose is, the light orange, is a little more opaque, so it's being tricky in the mixing. Technically, I should be working more on the other side anyway. I should stop doing this because I was going to work on the highlights on the dark side. I'm seeing a couple of places where there's some gray showing through, and I definitely don't want to leave that. Chris just wants new stuff to play with. Well, I mean, ReaperCon's coming, and there'll be new paint with that. We will have some dungeony themed colors. I imagine. Oh, nope. I have to wipe that off because I was putting light colors in a shadow area. So the values were right, but those colors were more intense than what I intended to place in that area. So there's a little bit of light here, and there's a little bit of light here, but I don't think any would be getting on the back of that leg. Wow, these colors are some of these colors are very close in value to the gray of the miniature, and it's getting hard for me to tell whether something is painted or gray in a few little spots. And I do like priming gray. I've been doing that for years now, since before Reaper started making the gray miniatures, I think. I'm a very why make a decision person, so that solves the gray versus white priming debate, I guess. Or the black versus white priming debate is just do it gray. Now there is some finishing stuff that I would do that's a little harder for me to do on stream, so I will probably wait and do some touch-ups after. So like there should be lining in between the pants and the boots. I can try and do that. But then there should also be edging on the top of the leather of the pants. And then I have to decide, just as I use different values for the dark and the light on the overall piece, when painting OSL, sometimes you're going to use different values of something like lining. Like I didn't line really in between her fingers that much because it's so close to the light that if I had done the same dark line that I used on this hand, it would look super weird. But I did put a very dark shadow under her thumb and under the bottom of her hand, because that's what, let's see if I can find my little reference picture. That's what it looked like, and that really helped convey the light, in my opinion. So I wanted to include that. So if you look at that here, there's this shadow here at the bottom of the fingers, and I wanted to include that to help shadows help convey the impression as well. Nomad Zeke says we're 10k away from the next unlock, and he's not certain we'll make it today. Curse wants more things to be unlocked so that they can buy them, which I agree. I want more things to be unlocked too. So there is a belt here that's not very obvious right now because I got pants color on it. And on the one that I painted for Reaper, I painted the belt the same color as the boots. I think I painted the straps for the scabbard the same color as well. And I would probably do that again. Here, how are we doing time-wise? I may have time for that. But it might be more instructive if I paint some of the base. So I'll start getting a base coat on the base and then try to get the flame a little further along and see where we are. I should be switching over to my pointier brush. I just got a note from Dick Blick the other day that my brushes are finally, or one of the brushes I ordered many moons ago is finally in stock and ready to order, which is a little surprising because the last update they had changed it to be, it wasn't going to be there until August. And I already ordered some brushes from a different place because I'm like, well, I left this late as it was, so, and they kept moving the date out. So I think I ordered in like January, and then they'll be like, now it's February, now it's March. And I'm like, okay, now I'm ordering from someone else, but I won't cancel this order because these things seem to be harder to get. So I'll go ahead and just have backup brushes. I like having backup brushes. Nomad Zeke is taking the stance of just throw a bunch of money at it now to help unlocks and sort it out later. I think that is a good stance. Quindy does not remember the weird pledge manager thing where you're adding, what did you call it? Bonus support? They're called bonus support now? Yes. And my guess is this is a Kickstarter thing. Don't think I'm in a couple of Kickstarters, but I don't think other Kickstarters. So I'll have to test on my Reaper one. I don't think there's anything I need to add to my other ones. I feel like I wanted to have a darker gray, but I don't, so we're going to mix it with my old buddy Black Indigo, which is a color from the previous Kickstarter, actually, but now available in retail. So I think all of the Kickstarter unique colors from the previous Kickstarter, I believe they are now in retail. And the ones that released this month that I forgot to show are these three, I believe. So if you didn't get in on the previous Kickstarter, but you would love to have some cool colors, now you can. And there were some nice colors in that. I've been trying to show off the colors, so if you go look at previous streams, you'd be able to see some of them. I used these colors on that thief guy I was showing earlier. Where is he? So some of those are the bruised purple and ashen brown, which is why I like desaturated purple. It's very flexible and useful. I did a whole show on using the Oxide colors. So there's Oxide Yellow, Oxide Red, Oxide Brown, which are great earth tone colors. And I showed you how you can mix your own skin tones from that. So somewhere in the Reaper archives is a show about how it's really not that scary to mix your own skin colors with that with those kinds of paints. So and you can, there are some other paint colors in the Reaper line that you can use for that kind of thing, but I'm not saying those are the only ones. Off the top of my head, Palomino Gold is one that I would look at for the yellow. I would have to go stare at my shelves to decide what colors are closest to the other ones. Get some initial paint on there. I can start doing some transitions. One of the things, and I didn't really talk about this in the post about OSL, because these things can only be so long, and then I figure people get bored and wander away, so I try to stay a little bit focused. Even then, I know I write longer than some people wish to read. But anyway, having something that shadows can cast on, or the more area you have for light to reflect from, if you go look at that post and look at Victoria Lamb's work, one of the first big OSL things she did was largely just a wall. Like, she didn't even paint the characters with OSL, really. It was just the wall, but it works so well that it's very convincing. All right, let me catch up. Daka Flocka Flame Kickstarter helped me change a mistake I made in the Pledge Manager last time. Oh, no, maybe it was Reaper that helped you fix it. So he's confident it'll all work out. Old DM says it's a Kickstarter thing, this new bonus support. Mr. T.S. Tiny Terrain loves the green color. Do you mean her top? Or did I show something else that was green? I had the I had this green, which is one of the new colors that released this month. But what else? I think I showed everything else that was green. But I am old and forgetful, so I may not be remembering that I showed stuff that was green. So I don't want to go too light on the base because, like I was saying with that leg, it's also amongst the furthest things away from the flame. But having those transitions will help sell the appearance of light. So if I can't go too light in a spot, I have to be willing to go dark. So let's get some more shadow over here. I don't want to go too shadowed because then I can't do a cast shadow, which also is nice in a light effect. This stone is sticking up so much that I'm not sure that it would end up. Yeah, I think it would end up shadow. I don't think the light would be getting around that. So I think we'll go a little lighter on this side. And I haven't added any color to this, so I would add a little orange or red down here at some point for the color of the light. But to me, it's always more important to make sure that I've done the light part of the light before I worry about color. So I will often paint as if the light source is white and then add the color later. Which, if you look at the work in progress pictures for these miniatures, you can tell that I did that with them. So I didn't have a super dark gray, so I'm just using my old buddy. Black Indigo to build up the shadow side a little. Now, after this is done, I would go back in, and this is how I painted this. I'll go back in and worry about all these little cracks and whatnot, but I want to get that overall sense of it's darker here and it's lighter there before I bother with the detailing part. Which, again, is the idea behind sketching. If you hear people talk about sketching or roughing in. And go back to my flame, which, as I've mentioned, is not my favorite part and is something that would normally take me a little longer than I'm going to take here, so it's not going to look, top notch. Sorry, one of my brush handles is paint's coming off the handle, which doesn't impair the bristles at all, but it does make stuff fall all over the paint area. A little bit of that. Orange or whatnot down there. So yeah, for those who came later, I was talking about how most people in miniature painting will tell you that the right way to paint flame is the inside is going to be the lightest colors, the hottest part of the flame, and then you start getting, the red and the orange further out. So if you're painting a normal flame, which this torch is, you probably want to paint it that way unless you're prepared to listen to people tell you did it wrong when you post it on the internet. Which, I mean, is fine as long as you're prepared to listen to people tell you did it wrong. But I think for magic stuff, we know what we want. Now, on the mage, where did I put that mage? I did go ahead and do it that way, but I also kind of wanted to accent the planes of the spell effect. So some of the shadowing, there's a little more on a side and a little less of the, the heart of it is white, just because I wanted to it's such an interesting shape. I wanted to make sure that the paint explored the shape. So I'm not really, I probably won't do the sword on video. Metal reflects light, light's bouncing around the scene. I don't think you have to follow the same exact process with metal objects. So if you look at the metal on the original, I didn't, you know, it's darker on this side and it's lighter on this side, but I didn't follow all the same rules that I'm following here. So, oh, and you weren't seeing the sword. So there's the sword. But this is an opportunity to pause a minute and compare whether we agree that the overall effect of the light source is a little better on this. This one where I'm trying again, I'm trying to take my own advice and make the light source a bit more striking. So I haven't painted that little pouch yet, or her leather belt. But overall, I think I'm accomplishing my goal. That base is clearly still drying a bit. Gonna dial back a bit of the dark red on this. Really just meant it to be the tip. Wow, that seems like I am lifting up paint from that area after I told you that you rarely have to worry about lifting up paint. But rarely isn't never. I'm going to get a fresh bit of that orange because I think it's got a little watery on my wet palette. Now, there are some reasons why the original isn't great were intentional, but I'm not going to lie to you, I don't think all of the reasons were. I think I missed a few tricks of the game in painting source light, and I could have done a better job. Make sure that I have white kind of in the center of those flames, but I also liked it on the other one when I kind of put white most of the way around the where the fire meets the top of the torch holder thingy. I have questions about how these objects work, but that is for another day. Alright, so the base is getting drier. What I think I actually did on the other ones, I probably won't do today because it would take too long. But I think I painted it. Then I think I did like kind of what I just did here. Then I did washes, and the washes were different levels. So there was a lighter wash here and then a darker wash here. Then I dry brushed or side brushed up some of the texture, and then I filled in all the little cracks and stuff. But I think I'll just skip ahead straight to just a little bit of dry brushing or side brushing to bring out textures and then the cracks, because this is kind of supposed to be the less stressful version, I guess. The more quick paint version, maybe. Taka Flocka Flame. The old one looked good, but it almost made me think of Moonlight rather than Torch. Yeah, I think the color choices were just a little too subdued. On this character, I don't know that it was as bad on the other characters, but this particular character, I think I needed to get the hair and the shirt in particular with higher saturations on the light side. So side brushing is kind of like dry brushing, but instead of, vigorously going back and forth or even sort of dusting, I'm literally using the side of the brush. Let's see. So on the principle that, that's a flat side, nothing's going to be able to get in the crevices. So it should keep the shading intact. And this is also a decent approach for hair and fur textures. Add some white, so I want to be pretty judicious here. But since the floor really does sell the effect, and I would add, some orange or red glazes over there, and that would take the color down a little. So I do want to overshoot my values just a little on anything that I'm going to glaze, which I also don't think I did on the original. Pendrake. Twitch is strange. I tuned into Anne, no ad. I tuned in just now. Geico Gecko nattering on about some such. Hey, Pendrake. Yeah, I get the same thing. It's like, there'll be days where it just lets me go wherever I was planning to go, and other days where it's like, please enjoy this very long amount of ads. Shadow area. Because I really don't want it to be maximally dark so that I can do this cool thing later. Well, actually, let's see what time it is before I say later. We have 15 minutes. We're probably good. So if anyone's come in recently and you're here hoping that this was the Bones 6 fix starting early, it is not, but that will be what happens on this channel in 15 minutes. There will be someone from Reaper, if not multiple people, so they don't feel like they're talking to the void the way I do, giving us some kind of update about what's going on with the Bones Kickstarter. But I am one of the regular shows that airs here, so I'm here between 2 and 4 Reaper time. Every Monday. Not every day, just Mondays. Unlike Anne, I don't paint every day. I do not have anywhere near the energy of Anne, sadly. I wish I did. Alright, so I think I need yet more of my black indigo. Add some of these lines. I'm not going to go crazy with it. Am I on camera? Let's make sure of that first. So this is, there are a lot of lessons to learn from source lighting that I think can be applied to regular painting, which is one reason I think it's good to practice source lighting. Because honestly, the way I painted my first source lighting miniature or two is the way I just paint now, like for regular lighting. So if you're trying to push your contrast, OSL is a good education in evoking light and some of the stuff you have to do that. And then if you just go to your regular miniature and you go like, okay, I'm going to paint this as if the light is coming, slightly from this side. And you wouldn't have the shadows as dark as that and as much, from that side. You wouldn't have it as dramatic, but, well, I mean, I didn't go nuts doing it, but if you look at her skin, I was assuming a little bit that there was a light from that side. And that'll help you push your regular contrast more, I think. If you practice with OSL a bit and you think about it, it can help you push yourself to do more dramatic regular contrast, which most of us need to do. But, so lining is an example of when I'm giving people feedback after the ReaperCon contests, or even just generally other contests, other places I've been in classes. Lining is one of the most common things that comes up that people haven't done. And I often get pushback on it. So I'll say, well, it would help a lot if you lined this so that I could see that separation between the belt and the pants more. The value of those two items is similar, so you need to do lining so it separates. And they're like, well, I don't think it's natural. Except it is natural. The more I've been studying regular art, it's occlusion shadows. It's the light is occluded from going places, so there's a little shadow underneath things. So like if you look, I have to be careful not to move, but there's a little shadow under here because the light, even though I have like 14 lamps on, the light is occluded from reaching there. And that's the kind of thing when you've got someone's foot on the ground, the bounce light can't get in everywhere, so there's like a little line of shadow where their foot meets the ground. And we're used to seeing that. If you look at a vase on a shelf, there's going to be a little darker line underneath the vase where it meets the shelf. Most lining duplicates that. It's not trying to be a comic book with, big dark lines, like a drawing. It's trying to imitate occlusion shadows, which are natural and real and make your figures look more real than if you don't do it. The trick is that sometimes you can't always do black or the darkest color or whatever, or it does start looking a little cartoony. And then the other trick is the manual dexterity of getting it where you want it and thin enough and whatnot. But that is a separate point. As a concept, there is no reason to resist the concept of lining. It is very important. And Michael Proctor will say, and I think he says this partly because it was true for him, it is probably, if you aren't doing it, it is probably the top thing you can do to improve your paint. Like more than blending or whatever. Because blending isn't going to make any difference if I'm over here, blending isn't going to make any difference to how well you appreciate this figure. The lining will. The lining works at arm's length and close up, really. Did I go too close? Am I like, yeah, that zoom is better. I think it focuses better at that level. So I'm not going to bore you with all of the lining, but I wanted to put in some of the texture of that stone because I think it makes it more interesting. As well as, being real. Contrast is also more real than you think it is. If you go look at, next time you're outside and in the sun and there's some people to look at, take a look at them. Find someone with a white shirt and look how dark are the wrinkles in their shirt. How dark is the side of their face that's facing away from the sun. You will be surprised to find that these things are actually a lot darker than you might think they are. Because our brain tells us, okay, it's a white shirt, so it's white. But it's not. It's white in the places that are receiving the most light. It's, hold on, I got distracted with what my colors were. It's going to look darker where it's not getting illuminated. it is hard to talk and paint at the same time. I am no master of it, that is for sure. I think there are places where I still have a little bit of gray showing, disturbingly enough. But that is all stuff I can work on later. So I think I got the flame about where I want it. I'm not going to do any glazing or whatever now. Maybe I will do that on another show. It's unfortunate I will no longer have the original miniature to compare with, but I will have photos, so I'll be able to do photo side-by-side comparisons. But the other one has to go live with Reaper now. Oh, I'm not on camera. So just adding a little more lining and discovering a few more places with little bits of gray that shouldn't be showing. Alright. Is there anything else instructive we can take from this miniature before we sign off? Did I line there? I think I did, but do it again just to be sure. And then I need to go through, and I didn't really do the waistband of her pants because that's like a detailed thing that I would want to see a little better for her. Just, well enough to make sure that I'm not going to mess up the top, at least. I mean, she's not supposed to be like a totally amazing miniature, but I would like to have her look okay for the demonstration purposes of comparing the OSL and stuff. So let's look at the base again, because I was working on that. And the shadow side isn't quite as shadowy, but I want to do this. And it will work better if it's not too shadowed. I might need to get blue liner for this even. But I want a slightly bigger brush. So this is something that can help sell the illusion a lot, which is cast shadows. So I'm just going to paint opposite the direction of the light, shadows for her legs. And you don't want the edges to be like crazy straight. Like I just drew them straight. In reality, the edges are going to be crisper and the shadow is going to be darker the closer it is to the object casting it. But for miniature purposes, see that angle. And even if I don't get this 100% right, it'll still probably be pretty effective. That one drifted a little more than I wanted, so I will wipe it down and fix it. And I probably will need to, consider that kind of the starting point, and then I'll get the blue liner and go a little darker in the center of that shadow. So that's why I didn't want to make the stone on the shadow side like too dark, because I want to be able to see that. And let's see, I might have to take the other girl off her thing. So he didn't really get a lot of that because there wasn't a lot of base opposite the light. I did do a cast shadow on her base. But this is one of the areas where I had to compromise on these figures as a group. Because when you assemble them, some of them should be casting shadows on others of their bases or equipment, but they had to work as standalone figures, so I didn't do that. I didn't end up painting Like there's one cast shadow that if you really look closely, you can see it just ends at the end of someone's base, and it shouldn't. But I mean, that's everything we paint. We're making compromises. How much time you want to spend, how much you want to blend or not blend, how much texture you're going to add, whatever. We're always we're always making compromises. So, and if I got it wrong, like maybe I did kind of get it wrong with this girl, well, she's not the last thing I'm ever going to paint. So I can either fix her, which I did not choose to do in this case, or I can just take those lessons and apply them to things as I move forward, which is more of what I did in this case. I mean, Ron seems happy, and other people have enjoyed these miniatures, so I think that the compromises I made were not, like, the worst. I think they basically work. I'm probably more unhappy with them than anyone else. And not all of them. It's just that the light effect didn't turn out the way I wanted. Or it couldn't turn out the way I wanted, even. But overall, I like the color selection. And the wizard's light effect is pretty cool. So that's a bit more of the shadow on the base. So you can see where if you have a diorama or a bit more of a scene, even a backdrop, that it really opens up your possibilities for creating that illusion that there is light. When you have just a single figure base, particularly this is a very small base, if I could have at least expanded it by, she's on a fairly small base, but I expanded it. That can help you as well. Kirst says they're just an irregular viewer. Hello, Art of Mike Disney. You are just about in time for the, what are we calling it? I think the Bone 6 Fix is what, since it was Bones 5 Live, were the updates for the previous Kickstarter. I think now we're doing the Bone 6 Fix. So I was just working on, this is my second session of trying to paint a better source light effect on this figure than I did on the previous version that I painted. This is one of the characters, all of the characters in the adventuring party that I showed you are in the core set of the Kickstarter. And I guess I may get a chance to show her live on stream if we're streaming for Reaper, but I still have to finish the horns and the base and the eyes. I haven't finished. I'm trying to decide what glowy eye color to use. So she's not quite finished, so that's kind of a last look at her. Sadly, Mike Disney is not going to be joining us at the launch party. Well, that's too bad. I'm sorry that we won't see you. So I don't know if there are any of the other figures that anyone wants to see again before I turn this over to Reaper. So no raids. We're going straight to... Well, I imagine there'll be a few minutes while the troops assemble. But I will show this guy one more time. This is going to go in a raffle to aid people in Ukraine. So I believe the raffle starts May 15th, and I'll have more information about that then. But I just wanted to give you guys one last chance to see it live, because I would love if I could sell some tickets and help out. But there's going to be cooler things than what I'm doing. Even I've seen some stuff from Eric Swinson, Aaron, Corporea. Aaron is working on something. I think there's some other great artists working on stuff. So even if this guy is not your style because you can use him in the game or whatever, there will be things. There will be cool things. Well, thank you, Mike. I really appreciate your saying that. Eyes are still frustrating even now, but they're easier, but there are still those moments where it's like, oh, why am I having to do this eye for the 14th time? But everything does get a little easier with practice. Kirst13 can tweet that one out. Can tweet which out. Did I say something goofy? Hopefully not. So I will switch over to my say goodbye screen and... Oh, the bird. Yeah, I'm actually not on Twitter, but I will put it on Instagram and my Facebook page. Hopefully, the people who run the raffle also advertise things a lot, so hopefully they'll do it. Twitter is like the one social thing. Well, Mike, you can watch the video on demand. Yeah, anyone else who wasn't here for the beginning or missed last week where I talked more about the source lighting and did the hair and the top and the skin, video on demand is your friend. And then Reaper archives them on YouTube. So I'm going to be quiet now and let you enjoy all of the knowledge about Bone 6. Thanks for coming. See you maybe next week, but if not, the week after that.